and welcome back into another episode of Integrative Health Simplified podcast. This is Kari, and I'm excited to continue our series, Common Health Misconceptions. This is episode 11 in season 1, and we are talking today about parasites. So I titled this episode, There's No Way I Have Parasites. I haven't been out of the country. So this is definitely a misconception, and I want to just speak into this in a brief way in this episode, but I also have a really exciting announcement at the end of the episode if you want more information about this topic, which really I get asked about this a lot, and people are very curious about this topic, maybe because they think it's gross and they're just intrigued, or maybe they're like, wow, I have a lot of these symptoms and I feel like I need to do something about it, and I just kind of keep chasing my tail. Maybe this is what I really need to do, is address parasites. So do you have to go outside of the country to get parasites? Absolutely not. Now, I'm not saying if you went outside of the country that you wouldn't be exposed to more. However, we're exposed to these things all the time. Soil and pets and food and water. They all can have the possibility of having parasites in them. You know, it's just something that we are exposed to sometimes on a daily basis. So why do some people tend to exhibit more symptoms? Why do they stick around in our body? Like, these are all questions that I'm going to hit on during this episode, but I'm really going to go more in depth in something that's coming soon. So I'm going to tell you about that at the end of the episode. But I first wanted to just give you a list of some of the more common ways that parasites tend to kind of show up in symptoms that we might experience. So this list is not exhaustive by any means. However, it is just some of the more common ones that I chose to include. So abdominal pain, anemia is definitely something that can happen whenever we have parasites that have been there for a while and or have kind of gotten cozy, maybe invited some of their friends to stick around, maybe multiplied, right? Parasites like to eat iron for food. And so that is a really big reason why we can see anemia in someone that has a parasitic infection. Strangely enough, anger can actually, and a lot of more emotional issues can actually stem from parasites, because they kind of dysregulate your nervous system. They can really throw off some of obviously the gut microbiome that is really affected to our neurotransmitters, and that can really affect our emotions. So anger is one. Anxiety, which would go in with depression, both of those can be associated with parasites. Autoimmune issues are a really, really big one that oftentimes get overlooked. But a lot of autoimmune issues stem from parasites throwing off different things in the body. That's kind of like a ripple effect. Obviously, a lot of digestive issues can come from parasites, like bloating, constipation, diarrhea. GERD is another one that's really big because they really throw off the balance of stomach acid, and because that's how they survive, amongst other things, right? Throwing off stomach acid is something that's kind of multifaceted, but this can play into that. Issues with your weight. So whether you're underweight and can't gain weight, or whether you're overweight and can't lose weight, they can really cause some fluctuations in weight. Brain fog is a big one, because what parasites tend to do is clog up the drainage funnel, and that can really cause a lot of things to back up in our body, and that can cause a lot of brain fog because the brain can't drain properly. The brain has a drainage system called the glymphatic system, and so if that's not working properly, a lot of times you'll experience brain fog if you have parasites. Also, brain fog can be related to nutrient deficiencies, and parasites do cause nutrient deficiencies because that's what they like to survive off of, is a lot of times iron, and then of course getting some of the nutrients from our food. They're stealing nutrients from us. So brain fog is a big one that I see. Liver issues. So in the previous episode, in episode 10, I talked about the liver and how it does all these great things for our body, and oftentimes it gets overlooked and needs more love, and that can be a really big thing that we miss. in the whole, health picture. And so liver issues could be liver pain. It could be the liver not working properly like it should. That specifically was an issue for me. And so I'm going to share a little personal story in a minute. But liver issues are a big one as well, because parasites are not necessarily only going to be in the gut, which is, maybe something that people tend to get stuck in their head. Like, okay, if I have a parasite, it's going to be somewhere in my intestines or my stomach or whatnot. But that's not necessarily the case at all. Migraines and headaches can be caused from a parasitic infection. Having a chronic or persistent cough and just kind of having phlegm in your throat, almost like you have to clear your throat a lot, that can be a sign of a parasitic infection also. I know I mentioned autoimmune issues, but one in particular that often gets overlooked is POTS. That is an autoimmune issue that often stems from having a parasitic infection. So the last three would just be fatigue, because obviously if you have these parasites that are living in your gut or otherwise, that is going to really make your body feel very sluggish, because the whole goal of a parasite is not to kill you. It's to survive off of you. So they're slowly sucking things, like sucking the nutrients from you. They're slowly creating some of these problems that can really persist years and years, and you might not even notice it. And then one day you wake up and you're like, I have a lot of these symptoms. Parasites have a very long lifespan, or they can. So that's one big one that I often see, is just fatigue. Skin issues is another one that can really be cleared up by doing some parasite work. And then sleep problems. So oftentimes parasites are more active at night, because they kind of feed off the serotonin melatonin balance in our body. And so that shifts at night. And so sometimes they can be more active at night, reproduce at night, which is nasty, right, to even think about. But hey, we're just being realistic here. So they can cause sleep disturbances. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but if you've ever heard of something called the full moon cleanse, or just, the full moon and how that could relate to parasites. So that is something that I think seems very out there. Like, are you sure that this could really be related? And yes, it's a real thing, because during the full moon, you have a shift in your melatonin and serotonin. And so that is what the parasites use for food. And so if there's more of the food that they like to eat, they're going to be more active. They're also going to reproduce more around a full moon. And so a lot of these symptoms, plus others, right, you could experience more of around a full moon. So I would just encourage you, if that's something that you kind of are like, oh, wow, that could be some of my issues. Take note of when the full moon is, and just see if you have more of some of the symptoms that you've been experiencing, or maybe you have new symptoms that pop up around the full moon. There definitely could be a correlation with that that's often missed. And one specific thing is that oftentimes, a lot of the things that I mentioned are multifaceted. So it could be coming from other issues that might be going on, not just parasites. So sometimes when people, especially women, are like, I have different things happening around my cycle, does it coincide with the full moon? Maybe it has more to do with that than your actual cycle. Just something to consider. I see that a lot as well. And so when I tell people to just kind of take note, they're like, oh, I didn't even realize that. So that's just something that you might want to consider as well. So those are just some kind of clues to you that you might want to consider looking more into this. So why do we seem to have so many more issues with parasites now? So it's interesting, because a lot of people think parasites are actually the root cause. And really, parasites hang around in our body because it's full of toxicity. They are actually there to get rid of and soak up some of that waste, if you will. So it's not really necessarily that parasites are the root cause. It's actually the toxicity that is making them want to hang around longer. So that's just an interesting thing to think about. And I know that a lot of us have if you're listening to this, more than likely you have kind of taken note of your toxic load and, things in your home, things that you eat. Maybe you haven't, but a lot of people have. However, sometimes, you kind of forget how you used to live and how, if you maybe used to live more, of a toxic life, I guess I'm putting that in parentheses if you're not watching the video of this, but you kind of have to think where you were. And if you were exposed to parasites and they had a really great environment to stick around in, maybe they're just there because of that, right? Not necessarily where you're at right now. That can get really confusing. You're like, I feel like I'm doing really well in that area, but it's oftentimes what happened before, and they just kind of been hanging around because we haven't really done anything to get them out of the way, right? So that is really why they hang out in our body. Really, in a perfect world, especially if they're just in our digestive system, we should have enough stomach acid to kill off these pathogens and get rid of them. However, low stomach acid is something that most people have due to stress and chemicals and different things. There's a lot of different things that go into low stomach acid, but that also allows these to hang around in our body as well. They also create these little sacs called biofilm. It's just kind of like a little clear looking sac that they create so that they have a nice little cozy home, and it helps them stay underneath the surface of our immune system so they can just kind of hang around and hang out and have fun. And so that's a really big way that we can start the process of getting rid of them from our body. So that's just something, if you've ever heard of biofilms, that's what they are. And that's why we should try to break some of these open and, get these things out of our body. But it has to be done in the right way. And so I can't really go into all that in this episode, but if you think logically, right, if you're going to start killing something off, if you're like, okay, I want to do this, you have to have a great pathway for these things to get out. Because if you don't, then they're just going to recirculate. Say you just start a parasite cleanse, you just jump right in and you start to feel terrible. That's because your detox pathways were not open. And so if you start killing these off and they don't have anywhere to go, then they're just going to recirculate and they're going to make you feel terrible. So we definitely do not want that. And just a really quick little personal story here. I have made this mistake so many times because I didn't know about this drainage funnel and the way that these toxins leave our body. And so I would do these cleanses. Maybe they weren't specific to parasites, but they were, specific to like overgrown bacteria in my gut and different things like that. So I would do these protocols and I would not be going to the bathroom like I should because I really struggled with constipation and I would not feel good. So that was a really something I kind of kept repeating over and over until I realized, oh, wow, I need to address this before I go in and try to, kill off some of these critters. So that's a really big missing key that a lot of people skip over that step. So if that's something that you really want to work on, I have an exciting announcement for you. So because I get these questions all the time about, how do I know if I have parasites? Do I really have parasites? People are like freaked out by it, right? All of these different questions around this topic. I thought it would be just an awesome way and opportunity for you guys to come and tune in to this master workshop that I'm doing, which will be really a great place for you to dig deep into this topic because it's hard to kind of go over everything I want to go over and that you would need to know to really, dig into the topic and know how to actually perform a parasite cleanse on you, maybe your family, in the right way. That's a really key because you want to do it in the right way. So that's what I'm going to be going over in this master workshop. It's a parasite and drainage master intensive workshop that's going to take place on May 10th at 1 p.m. In the workshop, we're going to go deep into where do parasites come from? Like, why do they hang around? Why does some people have symptoms and other people don't really seem to have symptoms? What can we do about it? What needs to be in place before you begin? Like, what is the maintenance from this also? That's a really big question that I get also. So I'm excited about this. It's something I'm probably going to offer multiple times a year. However, you're going to get in this master workshop, you're going to get obviously time with me on Zoom. We're going to go in deep on this subject. You're going to be able to ask questions, and then you're going to get resources after that. You're actually going to also get access to a Facebook group that I will continue to post information in, that you can continue to ask me specific questions in related to this topic, because this isn't something that's a one and done, right? This is something that will need to be continued, and there will be maintenance to it, and you want to do it correctly. And it is a process. How do you know when you're ready to begin? Like, these are all questions that I will be going over in this master workshop, and also you'll have the availability to ask questions, on the workshop and then afterwards. So I'm excited to offer this. I'm going to give you more details about that master workshop in the description of this video and also in the show notes. So check that out. If you have any questions at all, you can always contact me. I have ways to do that in the show notes and in the description. I'm excited to dig into this topic. I really am. It's something that seems overwhelming, but doesn't have to be. And I'm excited to just kind of dig in and do this together. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next episode.